The Ace Ray Octane!
The what?
The Race Talk!
Okay, Big Mouth Season 4, guys! Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about Big Mouth Season 4. Now, unlike most typical reviews, I'm not going to pick one episode to discuss. I'm going to do the whole season. Just an FYI, I was a little afraid to put the titles, so instead of putting, this episode, I'm going to put, Episode 1, Episode 2. But let's go on with the review. This episode focuses on the kids going to camp. Well, everybody except Jay and Missy. Picking up from last season, Andrew and Nick are still in a fight. On the boys' side of things, we meet Nick's camp friend Seth Goldberg, who is clearly not Seth Rogen. He's alright, I guess. But much to Nick's surprise, Andrew and Seth actually get along. Uh-oh. And speaking of uh-oh, there have been mosquitoes in the background for quite a while, and all the stress is beginning to get to Nick. And it gets to him in the form of Tito, the anxiety mosquito. And as somebody who has had anxiety disorder all her life, you're going to love and hate Tito. I mean, Tito's no shame wizard, but Tito is a great season villain, if I'm being honest. But the real MVP of the camp is Natalie, one of Nick and Andrew's old friends, who is trans. And it's cool how, like Matthew, everybody accepts but isolates her. The boys don't know how to process it, and the girls, well, they force her to dress in ways that make her really uncomfortable. Speaking of, Jessie's going to camp too, and it's her last hurrah before she goes to Manhattan with Shannon. She doesn't like Natalie. Not because of the obvious reason, but because Natalie always used to tease her. But Connie, being the cool hormone monstrous she is, convinces her to bury the hatchet, and the pair actually become really good friends. It's really touching and cool to watch. But can we just talk about how Natalie's story has so many callbacks? She had Gavin as a hormone monster, she hung out with the ghost of Freddie Mercury, and she used little hormone blockers to banish Gavin. I know a lot of people got mad at the staff last season when they said they missed the mark, but here they really redeemed themselves. You have to give them props. I loved it. That's not the only cool thing that happens. We have Lola and Jay. They go to the public pool and they get into a fight and they go back to Jay's house where they put a pool in Jay's horrible backyard. They should really call somebody. And we also have Matthew and Aiden. I miss the four of them. They're actually hanging out with Jay this time around. Wow, that's a real step from last time. Beyond Seth, this was a pretty good episode. If I do have to give an issue, we don't see or hear from Missy this episode. We do see her next episode, but it would have been cool if at least got a mention. But on to the next episode. This is one gross yet super relatable episode. I can't discuss much here, but just know it is relatable and pretty funny. Especially the giant maxi pad that soaks up the lake, to the point where it causes plane turbulence. But it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Now, it sucks to be Nick. See, Andrew is getting on Nick by treating him like hot garbage. So much stuff befalls Nick that by the end of the episode, he's not Nick anymore, he's soup. Wow, poor Nick! Now on to Missy! I'm gonna be honest, I can kinda see how Jenny Slate wasn't comfortable voicing Missy after this point, considering what comes next for the whole season.
My mom's white, my dad's black, I'm voiced by a white actress who's 37 years old.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is what spurred her to leave the show. But first off, Jenny's gonna be voicing Missy till the second to last episode. I was kinda confused, but trust me, it makes sense down the line. So Missy learns she's gonna go with her parents to see her aunt and cousins. And can we just talk about how, yay, Mona's back? But Missy meets her cousins who think she's brainwashed, and they give her a makeover. They give her braids, and in an admittedly heartwarming scene, Missy gives up her overalls. But it does get a little upsetting, since she gets into a fight with her parents over her racial identity. Yeah, I can kinda see why Jenny Slade left the show after this. Also, just want to point out, there's Celeste, the hormone monster. I really want to know her story. And while we're on this subject, how do hormone monsters work? I know a big complaint people have about the show are the rules for them aren't that thought out, but the rules are even more fudged with objects, since when Missy is talking to her overalls, her cousins don't see her talking overalls, they just see her talking to a pair of clothes. In the last episode, Lola talks to Jay about his pillows. They can't have Maury explain the rules? Are they Fairly Odd Parents? Because, I'm gonna be honest, for the longest time, I went with that while the hormone monsters and the other monsters were real, the objects weren't. But again, pretty great episode. The only problem is that Jay's family still sucks. Even if last season made the point they were gonna try to improve. Hey, this is a show with character development. I'm a little surprised. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really like this episode. Or rather, I did like the episode's ending, but I hated how gross it got. Honestly, this is probably going to be an episode that splits the fandom down the middle. Why? Well, strangely for Big Mouth, this episode disgusted me. Up to this point, beyond maybe Seth, the show really hasn't disgusted me. See, the plot of this episode is that because Andrew's being such a jerk and he hasn't used the bathroom all summer, he's constipated, and if he doesn't use it, he's gonna lose touch with reality. I don't know, maybe it's because, if I'm being honest, I don't like gross out shows that feature human waste. Or maybe it's because that I'm usually eating when I stream a show, but I do not like when shows do this. But anyhow, it's the last night at camp, and there's gonna be a bonfire. And I'm kinda surprised. I don't know. Before the pandemic, I thought the whole season was gonna be about them at camp. Or they were gonna have a special about the camp, and then just have a normal season. And let's see what they do after this episode. But just an FYI, Nick and Andrew's feud is so bad that even Maury is mad at Andrew. Maybe because Andrew humiliated Nick at the bonfire, but you know that something is really up with you if even Maurice Beverly is mad at you. But this isn't the only embarrassing thing that happens. Andrew decides to go into the woods to stop being crazy, and he can't, because of a really good song. Like, from his waist. Okay, something you'll notice about this season are the songs are all really good, like better than last season, on par with the Shame Wizard song. And I like how they make a point to actually tackle that Andrew's toxic and nobody likes it. But Andrew's not the only one hanging out in the woods. Nick is there, thanks to Tito, and he's having a massive panic attack. It's probably the best scene in the whole episode, if I'm being honest. And Natalie and Seth also go into the woods to make out, but Seth doesn't want to tell everybody that he made out with Natalie. Like, low blow, dude. I love your actor, but I hate this character, and I'm so glad this is the last episode I have to deal with you. And this is also the last Natalie episode, but they do send her off on a high note. And we also focus on Jay and Lola. Jay and Lola have this gross, weird relationship. Even if peer pressure from Matthew makes them fight, they still stay together. It's super adorable. But time to talk about something that isn't adorable. So Nick finds Andrew in the woods, and he helps him use the bathroom in the woods, and it's made out like Andrew's giving birth. It's so gross, but I guess it's kind of wholesome, strangely enough, since they're friends again. But camp's over. On with the 8th grade. This episode is about the first day of 8th grade. It's great for everybody but Jessie, who has to go to an all-girls school in Manhattan. And furthermore, it sucks to be her since the girls are all rich elitists and she doesn't even know how to keep up with the work. Like, she actually cries since she has to go up to the board and do a problem she doesn't know. It's no wonder Tito becomes her new best... Kitty? Kitty is back, and one kitty to another, I am so glad you're back. And not just for this episode this time, but you're back for the whole season. Yes, I missed you. Thank you, writers. So it turns out that Tito and Kitty are working together. Yes, they are spot on with this metaphor, I love it. But it's still so sad. Kitty suggests they skip school, and Jessie complies. Whoa. But the main plot's about Nick and Andrew this time. The pair notice that everybody but them has a special someone. I guess Nick didn't learn from his experiences in season 1, and Andrew didn't learn in season 2. But Maury suggests that Nick and Andrew date some of the new 7th graders, and they do. They get Izzy, who loves to sing, and Misha, who finds pleasure in everything. But during a makeout party, the boys decide to switch partners, which the girls are obviously against. Especially since not everything revolves around the boys. Ugh, just one complaint, but they had to have a studio audience joke? Ugh. Also, I just want to point out, Lola might have maimed or killed a kid. But next episode. So the kids are going on a field trip to Ground Zero, and Andrew and Nick decide to sneak away to see Jessie. There, Jessie introduces them to her fake as fun boyfriend, Michelangelo, and she reveals she's been skipping school with him. But after all of this, Connie and Maury realize that Nick's jealous of Michelangelo. Admittedly, it does feel a little tacked on, but I think what they do the rest of the season, it kinda redeems it. But this leads into Connie and Nick getting into an argument, and Connie no longer wanting to be his hormone monster. And with nobody left to help him, all he has is Tito. Admittedly, another good episode. The main plot isn't the best, but the side plots really are. But I just want to point out that Matthew is diabolical. Coach Steve was born on the day in question, and he doesn't get that thousands of people died on that day. I think Butterscotch can relate. So Matthew spends the whole day messing with him. Like, even Caleb's upset. Like, there's one part where Matthew gets called to the front desk because they found Coach Steve crying when he found out the truth. Yeah. But Matthew does realize, wow, this is kind of terrible, so at the end he gives Coach Steve a cake and he sings him happy birthday. And just to point out, thank you for toning down Coach Steve. I will admit, I don't like Coach Steve that much, he's probably my least favorite character. He can be super annoying and his jokes can go on forever. Kinda like a certain dude from American Dad. He's one of the biggest reasons I didn't like last season, so thank you for that. But my favorite part of this episode was Devon and Missy. Missy realizes Devon acts differently in front of people, and he says it's because of code switching. Okay, this is a reason why I love the show, since despite how gross or weird it can get, it teaches plenty of good lessons. I mean, Devon and Missy go to an NYU party, and Devon gets into a Wakanda battle with some of the guests because of code switching. But because of Missy, he realizes that his relationship with Devin isn't the best, especially because of code switching, so they get into a fight. Like, thank you, writers, I didn't realize this was a thing. We even get a whole song about code switching, and it's probably the best of the whole season, and it made me want to do more research on the topic, so thanks for that. This episode takes place in the future. Nick's a game show host, and he's all alone, except for a robot clone he made of Andrew called Andrew 3000. Sucks to be him, but the way he acts in this episode, he really deserves it. Still, the future sucks too. And what sucks more is Missy, the ambassador to the moon, perished, and her funeral is going to be held at the middle school. But worse yet, as Nick's manager tells him, the world's going to end tomorrow. The Earth's core is going to collapse in on itself. But not for Nick. He's rich, and the rich are going to use an ark to settle on the moon. Only problem is, Nick has to bring a +1, another girl he can procreate with. Via a call with Andrew, he learns that the activist Jesse Glazer is going to the funeral. But Nick's car crashes and he's taken to his childhood home by Jay, the chieftain of a tribe of people who do unmentionable things, and include Nick's parents and Lola. It is cute to see that despite the apocalypse, Jay and Lola are still strong. At the funeral, Nick meets Andrew's son by Gina, and just one thing I want to bring up. When the adults see Andrew's son talking to Maury, all they see is him talking to the air. So, are hormone monsters invisible? Can they choose not to be? But during the funeral, he learns a terrible secret. Missy was murdered to hide the truth, and she tells everybody to go to the Ark. After a talk with Nick, Jesse decides to go with, where chaos ensues until Jesse manages to blow up the Ark, meaning every human but Nick is gone. Whoa. Good thing it was all a dream Nick had on the bus ride home. An anxiety dream brought on by Tito. The ending might seem like a cop-out, but trust me, Nick's star will return. In my opinion, this is the Duke Ellington episode done right, since it does relate to the rest of the season, and it's not just a one-and-done Emmy bait episode. Honestly, I loved that episode, but I know a complaint a lot of people had was he didn't do anything the rest of the season besides just tell his story. But on the bright side, Rick is back, and he's Nick's hormone monster again! This episode I cannot talk about. Trust me. It is a good episode and a hilarious one, especially Jay is tracking with the bell, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is the Emmy bait episode, especially with how it deals with consent. Just for the highlights, Devon divorces Devin, Matthew's mom finds her son's text to Aiden, Andrew thinks he killed his Zadie by leaving the door open and violating his method, and Jesse gets dumped by Michelangelo. This episode is about the funeral for Andrew's grandfather, Sadie. Jesse's mom lets her go back for the funeral, and she gets to stay with her dad. And his new girlfriend, Caitlin, is a slight step up from Cantardina. Yeah, Jesse's kind of overwhelmed, and Kitty and Tito are making it kind of worse. What you need to know about this episode is that Andrew's cousin and her crazy friend return, which I will get to, but this isn't the only plotline to happen. Matthew comes out to his mom, who doesn't let him do the church pig-off they always do. Matthew hates it, but he decides to enter with Aiden, and they make cake pops. Also, this episode is kinda refreshing. Usually with coming out stories, it's the dad who's always a closed-minded one. The mom either sides with him, or just accepts the kid. As horrible as it sounds, I kinda like how they made Matthew's mom so closed-minded. And we get a song from Matthew about his mom. Yeah, the songs in the season are really on point. And you finally gave Andrew Reynolds a solo. Thank you. And Maury is right, he does sing like an angel. Now let's discuss the funeral, because it's really crazy. I mean, Lola's Maury's rock. Yeah, I don't get it, but wow. Where Jessie gets really upset and she makes a scene and runs out. Nick consoles her, but he also tries to kiss her. Oof. And Jessie's parents finally decide she should stay with her dad and go to a therapist. Finally, she sees an actual therapist and not just one off screen. But trust me, this isn't the worst thing to happen. Something far more embarrassing happens. See, Andrew realizes he's getting anxiety, and Maury suggests he play badminton. So Maury locks him in the room with Sadie's body, and Sadie's ghost tells him to go do it. Okay, I admit, this is probably way worse than that episode with the human waste, but something even worse happens. All of Andrew's relatives walk in on him, because it turns out that Sadie didn't want to help Andrew, he wanted to humiliate him. Maybe for what happened last season, but wow, Sadie! It's so bad that even the Shame Wizard shows up. Like, OMG, I love this season. He confesses to his parents, who tell him he didn't kill Sadie, but his mom mentions all of the ways he can die, which give him a panic attack. And admittedly, it kind of gave me one too. Wow, I love this season, and I wonder how the kids are going to get out of this one. Picking up from last episode, Jessie finally sees her therapist, who is obsessed with toads. This will mean something. The therapist asks Jessie what she's grateful for, and Jessie doesn't know what to say. Again, this will mean something. But it's Halloween, so the kids decide to go to a haunted house. But something happens, and they somehow all end up in their worst nightmares. Nick ends up in a bathroom being chased by Pennywise, but it turns out it's really Nick Star, and Nick believes he's going to turn into him one day. But Nick doesn't give in to his fear, and he defeats Nick Star. And Jessie ends up in a mental institution. It's only through the gratitude teaching her grounding that she can overcome her anxiety. See, I told you, it is going to mean something. And my personal favorite, Missy ends up in a mirror room with different versions of herself. And it's only through perspective that Missy finally accepts who she is, by taking the shards of her past selves and making Mosaic Missy. Also, FYI, this is the episode where she gets her new voice actress. Admittedly, yeah, the voice is a little distracting, but you gotta remember that Jenny Slate has a trademark voice. It's like switching out Idina Menzel for Elsa. But Iowa Tedbury does a really good job.
Is it conceited to say that you're beautiful?
Not if it's true. Whoa, looks like he took off already.
Thank you, Missy.
Yeah, no problem, Nick.
Ah, Nick! Jinkies! He is a ghost!
Again, it's kind of noticeable at first, but you do kind of get used to it. And at least they gave Missy a whole arc. They didn't just replace her and that was it. And the arc was really good, and it made a lot of good points. You gotta give them props. It wasn't just a one-off joke, or they just got rid of her and that was it. It's a really nice send-off for Jenny Slate. But back to the episode. Matthew's fear is that he's trapped in bad local theater, and he must choose to either save his mother or Aiden. And it's run by one of the guys from Guytown. A nice continuity, I totally forgot about him. But Matthew realizes that his happiness is up to him, and he'll love himself. And Andrew, he's outside, where a bunch of near-death events affect him, but he's able to overcome it, and able to overcome Tito. Also, it turns out they're all in the haunted house when this was happening. I mean, I don't know, I guess they got drugged or something. But while this is going on, Jay and Lola get into a fight. Jay says, "I love you," but Lola doesn't say it back. Whoa. Also, we get another song. Again, the songs this season are really on point. Really, really great episode. I love this show. Now, there's only one episode left. While this episode wasn't as good as the previous one, it was still really good nonetheless. So basically, Nick Star took over Nick's body, forced him out, and now the real Nick is a ghost. But to backtrack for a second, can we just talk about Matthew? He tells his dad the truth, and he breaks down, but his dad doesn't care. He accepts him, like I told you. The way coming out stories work is the dad's almost always the closed-minded one. It's so great, it's so sweet, and it's so refreshing. And Maury is the best dad. It's too bad none of the adults can see or hear him. Seriously, I'm not getting over that. I need answers. But it does suck to be Jay, since Lola and him break up, and Lola vows to ruin him next season. So, yeah. But Jessie does find out that Tito's also been talking to Nick, and in return, she lets the Gratitude eat Tito. Seriously, I love Gratitude. He's the only good monster who isn't a hormone monster and has no ulterior motive. Thanks to Gratitude, Nick is able to enter Nick Star, and he finds that Nick Star is insecure. But Nick learns the only way to stop Nick Star is to accept himself, and accept that he will change for the better. Wow, dang, Big Mouth! And thanks to all of this, Kitty is small enough for Jessie to deal with, as is Tito. Also, just wanted to mention, Tito gets into a huge fight with the Gratitude, like a huge kaiju battle. But just wait, Kitty can be seen now? What? In all three hormone monsters? What? Yeah, I'm not letting that go, I'm sorry. But it all ends with a huge song from Rick. Not the best because Rick has a really annoying voice, but it is still pretty good. But can we just talk about the greatest moment in this whole episode, if not the whole season? Connie finally takes a bubble bath. Thank you, writers. So, that was Big Mouth Season 4, guys. Phew. And it was way better than last season. Last season's problem was they were too episodic. They would bring up these cool plots, then they would be done with it by the next episode. Like the girls protesting Lizer or the cell phone. This season, there were great storylines, great songs, and the humor was on point. Although there were a few problems. For one, I was kind of disappointed at how Jay's brothers and parents are still terrible. I get it, maybe they want to keep the status quo, but I was really disappointed they ended Jay's development last season. Also, I feel like they should have explained the concept of the hormone monsters a bit better. Or rather, with the objects in them, who can see them and who can't. They do kinda, but they also don't explain it that well. And they probably could have done more with the Shame Wizard. I loved Tito and Kitty, but it was kind of upsetting we only got him for like one scene. Although I do dislike we didn't really get that much about Tito and Kitty. Yes, obviously being depressed and anxious are horrible, and as somebody who suffered from both, you don't want either. But something I loved about the Shame Wizard was how even if they make the point you shouldn't shame people, and shaming sucks, shaming exists so that you don't make the mistake ever again. It's a weird message, but I like the point they were coming from. Like, even if Andrew did questionable stuff, and he still does questionable stuff, getting shamed made him want to control himself some more. I thought it was gonna be like maybe Tito thinks she's helping people, and really she's just making it worse. I mean, how does HR keep letting them do all these cases? But overall, really great season. I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. But what did you think about Big Mouth's 4th season? Was it a new high for the show, or a new low? What other content should I talk about? Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'm Kitty Monk, and thank you for watching.